I spent 3 years inside for something I didn't do. Fraud, they called it, but it wasn't my plan, it was his. When I finally walked out, I thought freedom would hit me like a fresh breath, like I'd finally broken the surface. But the first thing I saw was him, my husband, standing by the car, this paper in his hand like it was some kind of punchline. He smiled, this cold, twisted smile, and said, "You're legally dead now. Guess we're even." Behind him, our little boy was there, hiding half his face like he was scared to be seen. Then I heard him, whispering so quietly I almost missed it. "But Daddy said you were gone forever." That's when it hit me. We'd buried who I was long before I even stepped back into that door. When I stepped inside, the place was empty. Every drawer I pried open, every shelf I skimmed, gone. My clothes, my books, the little things I'd left behind, all packed up and vanished. I just stood there, frozen, feeling like I was stealing a look inside someone else's life. It was like the house swallowed me whole, like I'd never been part of it. I heard footsteps from the hallway, and there he was, standing by the door, my husband. But it wasn't him. Not the man I'd known, fought with, even loved at times. This version of him didn't look at me. His face was empty, eyes scanning past me like I was a ghost hovering too close to his reality. "You're home," he said flatly. No warmth, no relief. Just that dead tone. I wanted to ask where my things were. Wanted to ask what happened. But the words died in my throat. Our son sat on the couch, head down, arms wrapped tight around himself like he was holding back something. I tried to catch his eyes, anything, but he kept looking at the floor, like I was a stranger who couldn't be trusted in his space. His silence was louder than any answer, louder than any accusation. I remember the numbness creeping in first, like my body was running on a battery that was almost empty. I couldn't shake the shock of how easy it was for them to erase me. I tried to hold on to some fragment of normal, something to grab onto. The photo that used to be on the mantle. It wasn't there. The one from our wedding, the one where we both smiled, even if we were awkward about it. The photo had vanished too. Just an empty spot, a cold, blinking space where memories used to live. I ran my hands over it, over the empty frame, and a sharp ache hit my chest, like someone had ripped a part of me away, and I was still waiting for it to bleed. I wanted to scream at him. "Why did you do this? Why does it feel like I never mattered?" Instead, I said nothing. There was this terrible weight pressing down on me, heavier with every second. Maybe what hurt more was how little I seemed to matter in their lives now, like I was a chapter torn out of a book, ignored and forgotten. My son stayed silent the whole time, avoiding me like I was contagious. I thought maybe he was angry. Maybe he hates me for what happened. Or maybe he's just as lost as I am, but too scared to say it aloud. The house smelled different. Not the scent of home that used to wrap around me like a blanket, but something cold and empty, as if it had been emptied of all softness. I wanted to ask if it was over, if I was really being erased, but even the words felt foreign. I don't think I recognized myself standing there anymore. I was suddenly just a visitor, trespassing in my own life. When I finally sank onto the couch, I was barely aware of the silence, heavy and sharp between us. It felt like the last thing holding me back from falling apart was the same silence pushing me away. For the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't just locked out of a house. I was locked out of everything that had meant anything. All the promises, all the fights, the nights spent pretending this wasn't unraveling. They were just memories now, and even those were slipping away. I stood just inside the kitchen doorway, the death certificate clutched tight in my hand, like it was some kind of weapon. He was sitting at the table, unmoved, sipping his coffee like this was just another normal morning. I felt my chest tighten, my voice low and shaking when I finally said it. "Why? Why did you file me dead?" He didn't even look up. "It was necessary," he said smoothly, like saying it made it true. "For the insurance. The benefits. Without it, we'd never have been able to keep the house, pay off the debts." I swallowed hard, staring at him, trying to make sense of the calm lying right there on his face. "So you figured it's easier to just erase me? Pretend I don't exist, like I'm some liability?" He didn't flinch. It was just paperwork. Practical. Life had to move on. I felt my hands start to shake. Life had to move on. What about me? Did you stop for a second to think how that would feel? Seeing myself dead on paper? Like I'm nothing, like I'm just gone. He finally looked at me, eyes cold and flat. "You're not nothing. But you're not here, either. The debt collectors would have eaten us alive without that certificate. Don't make this harder than it was. Harder? It was more than hard. It was a nightmare. The part that cut the deepest wasn't just his decision, but the way he managed to say it like I was the one overreacting. Like I was crazy for being furious. You filed me dead to save a few dollars. Then you're asking me not to overreact. He shrugged, just like that. Almost like he didn't care. You don't understand how bad things were. I thought I was protecting us. Protecting us. That word spun around in my head, bitter and empty. How could erasing someone be protection? I wanted to scream, to shake him, to tell him he'd become something terrible, but I didn't. My voice was quieter, spiteful. You protected me by pretending I died. You knew I was alive the whole time. His jaw tightened. I could see the flicker of discomfort, quickly swallowed, replaced by that cold logic. Yes, because sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sacrifices. Like I was something to barter away. Like my existence was an expense on a ledger. I dropped the death certificate on the table, the paper flapping uselessly. It was official. They were treating me like a ghost, a dead woman who just happened to walk around breathing. For a long second, silence filled the kitchen, thick and suffocating. Neither of us moved. I felt a burst of helplessness unfold beneath my fury, the quiet realization that this might be who he's always been. That while I was screaming to be seen, he was coldly making decisions about me like I was nothing. Finally, I whispered, voice brittle. So what am I supposed to do now? Just live as a ghost in my own life. His answer was not an apology. It was silence. And in that silence, I felt something dark settle. This wasn't just about money or survival. He wasn't just protecting the family. He was erasing me. I looked away, my heart hammering in my chest. I thought, maybe I could find a way through this. Maybe. But the truth was, I didn't know how to fight someone who'd already written me out of existence. I stood in the doorway for what felt like forever, watching him shrink further back behind the couch. His little hands gripped the edge like he wanted to disappear completely. Mom, I tried, my voice softer than I thought possible, trembling like I was about to crack. But he didn't look up. Instead, he whispered, barely audible, the ghost lady. And I froze. That name, ghost lady. It hit deeper than any slap or scream ever could. It was like he saw right through me and past me, like I was already gone in his eyes. Not his mom, just some cold stranger wearing my voice. I swallowed hard, stepping into the room slowly, trying not to scare him more. Can we talk? I barely breathed it. The silence stretched. His little face peeked over the couch cushion, eyes wide, searching, scared. Please, I said, voice breaking. I'm still here. But he just shifted back again, pressing his cheek against the fabric, making himself smaller, smaller. It was like watching a part of himself die in real time. Every second, my heart stretched tighter, like I was being torn from the inside out. I'm not going away, I said, barely above a whisper, and it felt ridiculous, like I was trying to promise something to a ghost in return. He didn't respond, didn't trust it. And maybe he was right. I wasn't the mom he used to know, not the one he needed anyway. I sank down on the floor, close enough to show I wasn't a threat, but far enough away not to overwhelm him. I made mistakes, I said, voice shaking. I know I did. But I want to fix this. The words tasted bitter. I wanted to reach through whatever wall was between us, but he still clung to the shadows safe behind the couch. His eyes flicked to mine for a split second, confused, maybe scared, and then darted away. Why do you talk like you don't know me? His voice was broken, like he didn't even recognize who I was anymore. That crushed me. Maybe I hadn't been there enough. Maybe I'd become a stranger without trying to. He needed someone solid, someone who wouldn't disappear. Instead, I was a ghost haunting his space, one he could barely tolerate. I whispered, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry I wasn't better. Tears leaked down before I could stop them, and I hated how much I was breaking in front of him. But it was the truth, raw and ugly. I thought maybe he'd see that and want to come out from hiding. He didn't. I sat there for what felt like hours, only the quiet breathing between us. I wanted to reach out, but I was scared my touch would just push him further away. The guilt gnawed at me, like I was the reason he had to shrink into a ghost shell just to feel safe. Then, in the dim light, I saw it. A tiny hand peeking out from behind the couch. Just one, like a small question or a fragile hope. And I reached for it, slowly, making sure not to scare him off again. Our fingers touched, trembling together. Nothing more. But that little connection, fragile and silent, was everything in that moment. I whispered, so low I wasn't even sure he heard. I'm here. I'm not leaving. Not this time. He didn't say anything, but for a brief second, I felt something shift between us. Like maybe, just maybe, the ghost lady could start to become his mom again. But then, just as I was letting myself believe that, his hand slipped away, and the space between us felt endless once more. I thought it was the first step, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I was getting my mail when Mrs. Daniels from next door stopped me by the fence. It wasn't her usual polite wave or casual hello. Her eyes were kind of glazed, like she was pitying me before she even said a word. I didn't want to stop, but something about the way she hesitated pulled me in. Hey, Linda. I don't know if you heard, she started awkwardly. But, well, you know about Sarah, right? I blinked, already confused and tightening my grip on the envelope in my hand. Sarah? I asked, heart sinking. My voice probably sounded sharp, but I needed to know. Yeah, your, husband's new roommate, or whatever. I guess it's been a few months now. She glanced around like she was scared I might explode or something. Then she lowered her voice, like sharing a secret you dread. She died. Peacefully, the doctor said. I stared at her like the words didn't compute. Wait, what? My brain scrambled to keep up, but the pieces refused to fit. He told me she moved out. Said she was gone. That's all. Mrs. Daniels shifted uncomfortably and looked down, then back up with this faint, wrong kind of sympathy. I'm really sorry you're hearing it this way. I didn't want to be the one to tell you. Even the neighbor's dog started barking suddenly, sharp and harsh, like it was echoing the mess I was in. It felt like the dead had come home, making everything heavier. I wanted to shout at her, slam the fence, say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. I managed, how long have you known? She hesitated, biting her lip. Since a couple months ago. That's when I noticed she wasn't around anymore. And your husband? He wasn't the same. I guess he thought you wouldn't find out. I stood there, frozen and burning all at once, bitterness swelling in my chest. The idea that he had moved in someone else, months ago, while pretending to me like everything was fine. Like I was just a fool waiting at home. Why didn't you say anything sooner? I snapped, voice sharper than I wanted. It wasn't my place, she said quietly. I thought maybe, if you found out this way, it'd hurt less than catching him in a lie yourself. That made it worse. Like I was being protected from a truth that still cut deep. Like I hadn't already been living a lie day after day. I don't even know what to think anymore, I said, voice shaking. He told me she left. That she was fine. Not dead. Not whatever this is. Mrs. Daniels gave me a small, sad shrug and a glance that said, I'm sorry you had to find out from me. I realized I sounded pathetic, standing there in my own yard, listening to some old lady dole out pieces of my husband's betrayal. A cold clarity was settling over me. All the excuses, the doubts I'd held on to, started to crack. The whole time, he'd been living a double story, and I was just a chapter he wanted to forget. I wanted to scream or run or slap him. Anything to break out of the numb spot creeping over me. But instead, I just swallowed hard and stepped back from the fence. Even as Mrs. Daniels shuffled off, a kind of sickness sat heavy in my stomach. I wasn't sure if it was grief, rage, or the sharp, bitter taste of being completely fooled. The sun was higher now, but I couldn't see past the shadow of what had just been dropped on me. I thought maybe I'd get angry soon. But for now, all I felt was this slow, deep disgust, and a strange, quiet clarity that the place I called home wasn't mine anymore. I stood in front of the courthouse door for a long time, just staring at the cold, gray building. I kept telling myself it wasn't real, that there had to be some mistake. But I needed to see it for myself. I pushed through the doors, and everything inside felt sterile and loud. That echo of footsteps and murmured conversations bouncing off marble floors. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The woman at the records desk looked like she'd seen it all, but when I asked to look up my name, her eyes narrowed. Like I was already a problem. She tapped her fingers on the keyboard and didn't say a word for what felt like forever, then looked up at me with this strange mix of boredom and suspicion. What's your name? She asked, voice clipped. I need to check the death records. For myself, I said, watching her eyes widen slightly, and then narrow again like she doubted me. The hesitation in her voice when she finally said, You're listed as deceased. I stared at her blankly. What? My voice cracked. Me? That's not possible. She slid a document across the glass counter, face unreadable. I picked it up, hands shaking. There it was, my name, my birth date, and a death date filed months ago. Someone had declared me dead. There was an official seal, a clerk's signature. It looked exactly like the kind of paper you never want to see about yourself. I leaned against the counter, trying to steady my breath. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or maybe just disappear. Instead, I just stared at the page, feeling smaller with every second. How do you fight against that? Against a piece of paper that says you don't exist anymore? I looked back up at the clerk, hoping for some kind of answer, some way to undo this nightmare. Instead, she blinked slowly, like I was an annoyance who had just busted her day open. Dead people don't usually show up asking for their records. That stung more than I thought it would. Like I wasn't just erased on paper, but stripped of all dignity in the process. It was humiliating, standing there, officially dead, while the world kept moving on as if I'd vanished. No one bothered to tell me. No one had to see the wreckage of my life, but I did. I folded the document, tucking it into my jacket pocket, but my hands still trembled. My mind spun around in circles, trying to hold on to reality. What did this even mean? Could I still do anything to fix this? Was there any fight left in a situation like this? I swallowed hard and said, "Is there a way to fix this? To prove I'm alive?" The clerk shrugged, like this was someone else's problem, not hers. "That's above my pay grade. You'll need to talk to someone in legal services." Good luck. The words felt like a slap. Legal services. More waiting, more pretending it's just a paperwork mess. But inside, a strange flicker stirred. I clenched my jaw. If they could erase me this easily, I owed it to myself. I owed it to whatever was left of me, to push back. I turned and walked to the exit, the paper heavy in my pocket, dragging with the weight of all the things that had been taken from me. The sterile courthouse hallway stretched out cold and indifferent. I swallowed the panic tightening my chest and told myself I wasn't done. Not yet. This isn't how my story ends. But God, standing there, looking at my own death certificate, I felt more lost than I ever had before. And beneath that panic and shame, a hard, quiet determination took root. I was alive. I had to be. There was no way I was disappearing without a fight. I figured if anyone could cut through the bullshit, it'd be him. So I showed up at his office, hoping for some way back, like maybe he'd remember what we'd been through and help me claw out of this. But when I opened the door and stepped inside, something felt off. The place was quieter than I remembered, cleaned out, almost sterile. He looked up, probably surprised to see me after all this time. I said, "Look, I need you. I'm not asking for much, just a little help." But he just shook his head. "I'm done," he said flatly. His eyes didn't dodge mine, but there wasn't any warmth left in them. "You know why? I can't do this again." I sat there, feeling everything shrink in me. The guy who once promised to have my back, who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. That guy didn't exist anymore. Or maybe he never really did, and I was just fooling myself all along. He'd moved on, and I was still stuck in the mess I couldn't fix. I tried to push, to remind him how much was at stake, but the words just stuck in my throat. He wasn't the same, or maybe it was me who'd changed. Either way, the person I needed was gone. All the people I thought I could lean on had pulled away, one by one, like they'd buried me on paper, and now I had to dig myself out alone. It wasn't just him. I called others who used to care, and the answers were the same. Silence, excuses, nothing. I realized that no one wanted to be tangled up with my problems anymore. To them, I was a closed case, a weight too heavy to carry. I felt that sting, like a quiet betrayal hiding beneath the surface of everyone's polite indifference. It was worse than being yelled at or ignored. It was being erased. But sitting there, staring at the pile of doors closing in front of me, I didn't break down the way I thought I would. Some part of me just settled into a kind of numbness. The despair was thick, but so was this strange, quiet defiance starting to bubble up in the back of my mind. Maybe they all gave up. Maybe they really thought I was done, but I wasn't. Not yet. It was brutal, knowing no one was coming to save me. I couldn't even hate those who walked away, because tired as I wasn't ready to give up on myself. I told myself, if I'm going to sink, it's going to be on my own terms. If I'm going to crawl out of this mess, I'll have to do it blind, with only whatever broken pieces I have left. When I left his office, the day had already gone dark, and I felt like I was walking through a ghost town. It was a place I thought I knew, full of people who cared, but it was as empty as a grave. I don't remember what I told myself next, only that I kept moving forward, step by step, because standing still meant losing what little fight I had left. I thought the worst was that I was alone. But maybe the worst was realizing that everything I thought was solid was just dust waiting to slip through my fingers. They buried me on paper. Now I had to dig myself out, and the ground was harder than I ever imagined. I sat on the floor in front of the old filing cabinet, the dim light from the hallway just barely reaching the cluttered pile of papers and folders spread around me. My hands shook a little as I pulled out the faded envelope with my name written in sloppy script. The ink smudged as if someone had touched it too many times. Inside was the photocopy of my driver's license, an old one, the picture of a girl who barely looked familiar anymore. Holding it there, I swallowed hard. It was proof I'd been here once. Real. I taped it carefully inside a small notebook and then moved on, rifling through drawers and boxes. Every message I saved on my phone, every email from years ago, insurance statements, pay stubs, I gathered them all. I wasn't just looking for documents. I was gathering fragments of me. Things the world could see and say, she's here. She's real. I found a few old texts from my sister, the kind where she joked about me being a night owl and never sleeping. Reading through them, I felt a jolt, a reminder that people had talked to me, remembered me. It wasn't just some memory or feeling in my head. There was something physical, something undeniable. My heart pounded every time I thought about what would happen if the police found out I was still alive. Images flashed through my mind, the disbelief, the scandal, the way my family would react. Fear crept in, cold and sharp, but underneath it tightened my grip on what I had. I wrapped the messages in a rubber band and placed them in the folder marked proof. A small victory. At some point, I found an old insurance card for health benefits from a job I barely remembered having. The card was creased and torn, but the number matched one of the documents I had printed the week before. It felt like a lifeline, a ticket back. I memorized each number, snapping a photo with my phone. Maybe it wasn't much, but it was something official, something no one could erase. The more I collected, the less overwhelmed I felt, like I was building a fortress, piece by piece, around a version of myself I was afraid to lose. The room was silent except for the rustle of papers and the tapping of my fingertips on glass when I ran my hand over my phone screen. I kept telling myself, keep going. Don't stop. They can't erase this. I won't let them. At one point, I looked up at the mirror across the room. My reflection was tired, eyes rimmed red, but determined. I caught myself staring, as if trying to find the person inside. It was strange. A weird mix of pride and exhaustion was settling in. Here I was, fighting to prove my existence like some caseworker might ask me to. And yet, I was doing it. I was fighting back. Suddenly, a thought hit me. What if I missed something crucial? What if my list of proofs wasn't enough? Panic bubbled up quietly beneath the surface, but I forced it down. I shoved the notebook and folder into a bag and zipped it closed firmly. I had enough for now. Enough to take the next step. I stood up and stretched my cramped legs, feeling a strange surge of resolve. The documents were tools. The real fight was just beginning. Whoever tried to write me out of existence would have to go through all this evidence, one proof at a time. And I was ready. I locked the filing cabinet and turned off the light, the room plunging into darkness except for the glow of my phone screen, where more messages awaited, more pieces to gather. I looked down at the bag beside me and realized something. I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing to reclaim myself. I thought I could breathe easier now, but then my phone buzzed, a notification from an unknown number. My hand hesitated over the screen. Should I open it? I wasn't sure if I wanted to know what waited on the other side. I didn't care about looking weak or bitter anymore. I sat in front of my laptop, hands shaking as I uploaded the files, the fake documents, the bank statements he'd tried to erase, and right there, the death certificate. His name, signed and stamped, the cold proof that he'd been lying all along. I hit post before I could second-guess myself, before the panic in my chest could paralyze me. The screen went white for a second, then the post was live. I closed my eyes and took a shaky breath. For the first time, I wasn't defending myself. I was resurrecting myself. It felt like watching my own ghost, the version of me tangled up in his lies, break free. I knew this would bring a storm. People don't like hearing the truth when it upends their world. I started scrolling through the growing comments, some shocked, others angry, but most just stunned. I wasn't sure if I was ready for the flood it would unleash, but the quiet suffocation of pretending to be okay was worse. That's when my phone buzzed, a message from someone I didn't expect. His lawyer, the one who told me to back off. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the message, heart thudding uncomfortably loud. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, pretend I didn't see it. But no, I needed to know. Asterisk, we need to talk. This isn't over. Asterisk. The words felt like a slap, cold and sharp. Despite the release of speaking my truth, anxiety twisted in my gut. What did he want now? More threats? Empty apologies? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned back to my laptop. The post was spreading faster than I could refresh. People I'd never met were sharing it. Screenshots, comments, questions. The chaos was exactly what I needed. The louder the noise, the less power his silence held. But underneath that relief, I felt a quiet sadness settle. This was the man I'd loved, or at least the version of him I thought I knew, laid bare for the world to judge. And here I was, dragging pieces of our private pain into the open, hoping my shame wouldn't swallow me whole first. Still, I couldn't stop. The window next to me rattled as the wind picked up, and I caught my reflection for a moment. Eyes red, face drawn but fierce. This wasn't just a fight for justice anymore. It was a fight to reclaim something he tried to steal from me. My story, my voice, my life. I closed the laptop slowly, the weight on my chest easing just a fraction. I wasn't sure what would come next, but for once, I was ready to face it. That night, as the house grew quiet except for the occasional creak, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message, it was a call. I saw his name flash on the screen, and with a mix of dread and numbness, I answered. Hello. The silence on the other end was worse than any words. And then, finally, he spoke. I remember standing outside the house that morning, the police car parked in the driveway like some horrible monument to everything that had gone wrong. I didn't cheer when they let him away in handcuffs. There was no release in that moment, no victory dance. I just watched, like someone attending her own second funeral. Relief swelled in my chest, but it felt hollow, with an aching emptiness settling right behind it. The officers moved quickly, their faces tight but professional. I kept my eyes on him, my husband, the father of my child, as if the sight could still make any of it false. His hands cuffed, his eyes, for the first time in a long while, looked tired and defeated. I thought I'd feel something else. Anger, maybe, or satisfaction. But what came was just quiet. A release so faint I almost questioned if it was real. They told me my son would have to stay with my sister for now. The case wasn't closed. This was just the start of something much messier. I nodded, barely able to keep my voice steady. Every word from the officers made the walls I'd built feel more fragile. I wanted to be angry at my husband, but part of me was just lost. How do you reclaim what feels stolen without losing pieces of yourself? As I locked the door behind me that afternoon, I felt like the house had shrunk overnight. The silence was different, not peaceful, but full of absence. His clothes still hung in the closet. His mug sat on the kitchen counter. I stared at those familiar things and felt the room pull taut, like a rubber band stretched too far. I closed my eyes and swallowed the lump in my throat. I was relieved he was gone, but the gap he left behind was terrifying. My sister showed up a little later, holding my son by the hand. His face was a little pale, eyes wide and blinking as if trying to make sense of a world that suddenly felt upside down. He didn't run to me like he used to. I stood frozen, heart oddly numb, watching the way he clung to her instead. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was something harder to name. When they handed him over, his fingers brushed mine for a second, a brief flicker of the bond we shared, but it was fragile, and I felt it slip through my fingers like sand. I wanted to say so much, but couldn't find the words. Laughter, rage, comfort, all stuck somewhere deeper, tangled up in guilt and fear. Maybe I should have prepared him better, talked to him more honestly. But what kind of words do you use when everything is falling apart? That night, I sat in the dark, the barely there glow of my phone screen the only thing breaking the shadows. The house was quieter than I'd ever known it could be, and I realized how much noise we'd all created to cover the cracks. I breathed in and out, trying to steady myself, and somewhere beneath the exhaustion, a small part of me clung to hope. Maybe this was the first step toward something better, a way to protect my son from all the chaos while I figured out how to protect myself too. But hope felt fragile. like a tiny ember flickering in a vast, empty room. I wasn't sure if I could keep it lit. Not yet. Not after everything. I rolled over in bed and stared at the ceiling, the hollow quiet pressing in on me. The relief that he was gone was sharp, but the price felt too high. I closed my eyes and told myself I'd get through this. For my son. For me. God, I hoped I could. But the whole night felt like I was waiting for something else to fall apart. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure what that would even be. I remember standing by the window, waiting for him to open the door. It felt like my legs wouldn't hold me up, like the whole world was soft and spinning just beneath my feet. I had rehearsed what I'd say 100 times, but none of it seemed right anymore. When the door finally cracked open, he looked up, his eyes squinting in confusion, like he was seeing a shadow rather than a person. "Hey," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange to me, like it was coming from someone else. He didn't say anything at first, just stared like he couldn't place the sound. Then something in his face shifted, slow, like dawn pushing through fog. "Mom." He barely whispered it, and it broke me a little. I stepped forward, hands shaking, and he didn't pull away. Not immediately. He just looked at me like he was trying to decide if I was real or if this was some kind of trick. When he finally reached out, it was awkward, almost hesitant though. His arms wrapped around me, slow and careful, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he held too tight. But I held on just as gently. The apartment smelled different than I remembered, clean, but cold, like someone was trying to erase any trace of what used to be. There were toys scattered on the floor, small things that made me ache. He was the same boy in so many ways, and yet everything about him was a little dulled down. Like he had been waiting a long time to know if I was coming back, and now I was. We stayed silent for a moment longer, just holding each other. I could feel his heart racing against my chest, and I was fighting the urge to cry. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt close to him again, even if just a crack in the wall between us. "I've missed you," I told him, and it sounded truer than anything I'd said before. He nodded, and that was enough. He didn't say "Mom" again or ask why I left. Not right then. He just rested his head on my shoulder, and I let him. We weren't perfect in that moment. We were just two people raw from everything that happened, trying to find a way back. After a while, he pulled away just enough to meet my eyes. "Why did you come back?" His voice was soft, and I could hear the weight behind it. All the tiny pieces of pain he didn't show. I swallowed hard. I didn't have the right answer. "I'm sorry," I said instead. It was simple, but it held everything. Regret, longing, hope, all tangled up. He looked down at his hands, like he was thinking, then gave a small shrug. "Guess it's better than never." It hit me then how much distance time had put between us. Months, feeling like years. But here he was, letting me in, just a crack. Maybe that was all I could hope for right now. We sat together for a while, no rush to fill the silence. He showed me his drawings, little pictures he'd made, and I tried to remember the way he used to look at me, filled with trust and warmth. It was hard, but I held on to that as close as I held on to him. Before I left, I knelt down and looked straight at him. "I'm not going anywhere this time," I said. He didn't say anything back, but when I stood up, he didn't move away. The door closed softly behind me, and for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like a promise. I didn't expect it to fix everything. Nothing could. But he didn't call me Mom that day. He didn't call me a ghost either. And that was enough.